Tonight's story is far from ordinary. At first glance, it's just a birthday evening, a small, intimate celebration between loved ones. But beneath the surface lies something far more complex, something that tingles the nerves and stirs up a storm of emotion. Our heroine, Claire, is a confident, married woman with a steady life and seemingly predictable expectations. But tonight, nothing will go according to plan. Because her husband, Ethan, has prepared a surprise, one that will stretch the boundaries. And with it comes a third man. Not a stranger. Someone very familiar. Why is he here? What kind of gift awaits Claire? And how far is she truly willing to go for a feeling that ignites out of nowhere and burns from within? This is a story about trust. About the fragile line between what's allowed and what's forbidden. And about how one night can spark the beginning of an entirely new life. If you're ready, let's begin. But remember, the ending won't be what you expect. From the moment I opened my eyes that morning, I knew something about this day was different. It wasn't the date on the calendar. Not even the fact that it was my birthday. It was something else, a subtle shift in the air, something I could feel but couldn't name. Ethan, my husband, was calm and attentive as always, but there was something new in his eyes, a quiet depth, like he knew something important. And he was waiting for me to figure it out. I didn't ask questions. I knew him too well. He loved surprises, lived for building suspense. And I allowed it. I knew how to wait. For a while. We'd been together for 9 years. Comfortable. Familiar. Like a favorite morning coffee or a cozy throw blanket on a rainy day. Our life was warm, predictable, safe. But beneath that comfort, something else had always stirred, occasional glances that hinted at a deeper, unspoken current we both chose not to follow. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting strands of my chestnut hair. I wore a black silk dress with an open back, so light it felt like skin. It breathed with me, soft, fluid. I wanted to look good. For him. For myself. For someone else. I didn't let myself go there. Not until tonight. This evening, something special awaits, he said over breakfast, sipping from his favorite ceramic mug. Promise me you'll trust me. No questions. Even if your gift turns out to be a tiger? I teased. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me, long and hard. And something in that look shifted inside me, quietly but powerfully, like an undercurrent. The rest of the day, he kept me on edge. Teasing messages, passing touches, like he was playing every string of my patience. And I felt it building, a tension, pleasant and unfamiliar. It was like standing at the edge of something, and knowing a fall would change everything. When evening came, I found myself alone in the bedroom. A small envelope lay on the bed. Put on this dress. Nothing else. Wait in the living room. I'll be there soon. I smirked. Ethan loved his details. I did exactly as he asked. Candles flickered throughout the room. The music was soft, barely there, like breath. The atmosphere didn't feel like home. It felt like a stage. And I, the actress, waiting for her cue. The tension curled in my stomach like the drop before a free fall. That's when the doorbell rang. I startled, instinctively smoothing my dress. A courier? Another surprise? But the moment I opened the door, I froze. Lucas stood there. Ethan's best friend. The one we'd shared wine with more times than I could count. The one whose voice I could recognize with a single word. The one who'd always been safe, but never just a friend. He said nothing. Just looked at me. His eyes scanned my body, lingered on my face. There was no rush in his gaze, but there was something else. Energy. Intensity. Tension. May I come in? He asked, as if he didn't already know the answer. I nodded. Footsteps sounded behind me. Ethan. He came up, gently wrapped his arm around my shoulders, his hand trailing softly down my arm. "It's okay," he whispered into my ear. "Do you trust me?" I didn't speak. I looked at both of them, my husband, and his friend. And I knew, in that moment, this evening was no longer just a birthday celebration. It was becoming something much, much more. When the door clicked softly shut behind him, the room felt smaller. Not physically, emotionally. As if the air had thickened, saturated with something unspoken. I felt like I was watching a movie, only it was about me. Lucas stood a little off to the side, not approaching. He held no gift, no flowers, only that quiet confidence that always set him apart from other men. He seemed calm, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. A tension. A question. As if, like me, he understood, this wasn't just another evening. I stole a glance at Ethan. He wasn't surprised. Quite the opposite, he looked as though he expected every reaction I gave, every breath I took. His hand remained at my waist, not gripping, just gently guiding. He leaned in, whispered. "Just trust the moment. We won't do anything without your permission. But if you let yourself feel, I promise, you won't regret it." I nodded. Barely. Even to myself, I couldn't fully admit that I had already become a part of this silent agreement. They hadn't asked me with words, they asked with presence. And I answered the same way. Ethan took a seat across from the sofa, leaving space between us, and a charged silence. Lucas sat down too, not looking at me directly, but I could feel his eyes. His gaze didn't invade, it brushed, like fingertips across bare skin. Cautious. Measured. Respectful. I stood in the middle of the room, feeling both clothed and exposed at once. The dress that had seemed elegant this morning now felt revealing. I knew exactly how I looked. And for the first time, I didn't look away. "Would you like some wine?" Ethan asked, already pouring. I nodded again, taking the glass in silence. My throat was dry. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. This was something else. "You look beautiful, Claire," Lucas said softly. Direct. Honest. No flirting. Just truth. I didn't respond. Only exhaled. Like something in my chest had finally loosened. We drank quietly. Only the soft music filled the room. I heard every breath, every creak of the chair, every subtle shift, as if my senses had been turned all the way up. I sat between two men I had known for years. But tonight, they weren't quite the same. When Lucas stood and stepped closer, my skin warmed before he even touched me. He didn't rush. Just reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. A small gesture. But in it, everything. Intention. Tension. Focus. I didn't flinch. "We're not here to break anything," he whispered. "We're here to uncover." Ethan moved to my side again, his hand wrapping gently around my waist. And there I was. Between them. But instead of fear, came a strange calm. Everything was happening just as it was meant to. Everything felt right. Sorry to interrupt you, just for a moment. If you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do so. It's completely free, takes just 5 seconds, and it means everything to me and to the growth of this channel. And if this story resonates with you, hit that like button. Thank you, truly, for your support. Now, let's get back to the story. The wine melted slowly on my tongue, leaving behind a trace of bitterness and a sweet aftertaste. I sat between two men, one who had become part of my life, and one who had always been nearby, but at a careful, respectful distance. That distance was shrinking now. Quietly. Dangerously. The room was silent, but not in an uncomfortable way. It was a rich, breathing silence, as if the very air had taken on life. Candles danced across the walls, and for a moment, I felt like I was inside a dream, thick and slow like honey. But every glance, every brush of skin, felt far too real to be imagined. I barely moved. It felt like if I shifted, the spell might break. But instead of fading, the moment only deepened. Drew tighter. Sharper. Ethan leaned in and whispered. If you say no, everything stops. Right here, right now. But if, even for a second, your heart says yes, then just close your eyes. He knew how to speak to me. Not with pressure. Not with demands. Just with understanding. I inhaled, slow and deep. And I closed my eyes. The darkness made everything louder. I felt Ethan's breath near me. The warmth of his hand on my waist. The slight shift of fabric as he adjusted my dress, his fingers lingering longer than necessary. And then, another breath. Not his. From the left. The warmth of someone else's presence settled in the air. I couldn't see it, but I knew, Lucas was now closer. Ethan's lips brushed mine, soft, weightless. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a signal. An invitation. A beginning. I opened my eyes. Lucas was standing in front of me. His gaze was intense, but not forceful. There was no dominance, no demand, just stillness. And a kind of quiet interest. Honest. Deep. You're the only one who decides tonight, he said. I could feel my heartbeat, wild, fast. Not from fear. From anticipation. Ethan moved behind me and wrapped his arms around my body. I trust you, he murmured. But do you trust yourself? That was the hardest part. I didn't know where the line was. What counted as loyalty? And what counted as truth? But I did know one thing. I had never felt this alive before. And when Lucas gently reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. I smiled. And something inside me shattered, only to rise again. The night was just beginning. And I was right in the center of it. This night felt like it was peeling back the layers of my mind, one by one. First came the spark of arousal. Then unease. Then, full immersion into the unknown, something I couldn't escape even if I wanted to. I was in the eye of a storm that threatened no one, except me. And still, I didn't want shelter from it. I wanted the wind. Ethan stood behind me. His touch was precise, like he knew the map of my body and emotions better than I did. His fingers glided gently down my arms, checking, almost measuring. Was I ready to cross a line? In front of me stood Lucas. He didn't move. But everything about his stillness said he felt it too, this growing pull, this low, electric tension. His eyes were calm, but deep, like there was something inside him waiting to break the surface. He wasn't rushing. He was waiting. For me. I took a slow, deep breath. My heart beat too loud, thudding in my ears. Every nerve was alive. Something inside me was trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of what I was feeling, and not fully understanding. It's okay, Ethan whispered, brushing his lips against my neck. He knew how to calm me, or stir me even further. His voice was warm velvet against the rising pulse of my breath. We're here with you. Not against you. Everything depends on what you want. His words dissolved my fear. He wasn't pushing. He was giving permission. And for the first time, I didn't just see him as my husband. I saw someone who could see me, maybe better than I ever had. Lucas stepped forward. His hand brushed mine, warm, firm, but not possessive. He ran his fingers lightly up my wrist, as if reading my thoughts through skin. Every touch sent a ripple through me. I didn't move away. I didn't pull back. I leaned in, just slightly. Without meaning to. I met his gaze. He didn't speak. He didn't ask. He was just there. Present. Open. Real. And then I realized. I didn't feel guilt. Not toward Ethan. Not even toward myself. I felt relief. Like someone had finally opened a window in a room I didn't know had gone stale. Ethan came closer again. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You don't have to do anything," he whispered. "We just want you to feel. No fear. No rules." Lucas moved even closer. I could feel his breath now. His scent, warm, musky, grounding. His presence surrounded me. His fingers slid over mine, soft, slow, unsure. And I squeezed his hand in return. That was the moment. The one you don't come back from. There were no more words between us. Only breath. Silence. And a warm understanding that hovered in the air, tying us together like invisible thread. I wasn't thinking about what was right or wrong. I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. I was only thinking. For the first time in years, I felt alive. And when Lucas's lips brushed my cheek, while Ethan still held me from behind, I knew it. The boundaries were gone. Time stopped existing. Minutes blurred into a slow, heavy current, where nothing remained except bodies, breath, and the charged air between us. Ethan stood behind me. His arms held me as if to keep me from falling, though I had already jumped. And Lucas, his hands still held mine, but now his fingers weren't just touching, they were reading. Reading every tension, every tremble, every pulse of anticipation through my skin. We didn't speak. Words had lost their meaning. Everything that mattered happened in the pauses, in glances, in gestures so subtle they were barely there. Lucas circled me slowly, almost testing, would I flinch? I didn't. Not because I couldn't. But because I didn't want to. His gaze burned, but not with threat. It wasn't an invasion. It was an invitation. "She's beautiful," he said softly, speaking to Ethan. My husband didn't respond. He simply tightened his hold on me. His hand slid slowly up my arm, over my shoulder, tracing along my collarbone. He knew every place that made me tremble. And he used that knowledge now, not to control me, but to connect. Calm. Confident. With love. Yes, love. Strange, evolved, but real. Lucas reached out and touched my face. His fingers were warm, slightly rough. He brushed my cheekbone, traced along my jaw. I didn't blink. I looked straight into his eyes. He leaned in, his forehead gently resting against mine. "If you say no, I'll leave," he whispered. I didn't speak. I simply closed my eyes. And leaned forward. The kiss was delicate, as if he were afraid to shatter the crystal of the moment. But beneath that gentleness was power. A depth that made my breath catch in my throat. I still felt Ethan behind me. His breath at my neck. His arms around me, grounding me. And in front of me, Lucas, kissing me like no one else ever had. My body forgot how to stay within the lines. I squeezed Ethan's hand. He squeezed back. And in that paradox, I felt safe. Even while crossing every line I had ever drawn. There was no competition. Only harmony. And in that strange, quiet triangle, I realized. Desire isn't betrayal. It's awakening. Lucas pulled back first. His gaze was heavy, like he had just inhaled too many emotions at once. Ethan looked at me. His eyes held everything, pride, passion, understanding. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. Slowly. More than ever, I whispered. The room felt suspended, somewhere between an inhale and an exhale. Candles burned low, casting soft reflections across the furniture, the walls, our faces. Music still played faintly in the background, but it no longer mattered. The air had changed. Not in scent. Not in sound. In presence. I sat on the floor, leaning against the couch. My bare feet rested against the cool wood. The dress had slipped off one shoulder, but I didn't fix it. Not out of fatigue. Out of peace. A deep, strange kind of peace, not empty, but full. A thick, quiet stillness that held me like a warm blanket. Ethan sat nearby. He didn't touch me. But his presence, it had never felt closer. He didn't ask questions. He didn't expect answers. He just looked at me, with a gaze full of quiet awe, acceptance, maybe a touch of sadness. But no jealousy. Lucas stood by the window, half turned toward us. His silhouette, backlit by the candlelight, looked like something from a dream. He didn't speak. Didn't move to break the silence. It felt like he didn't want the night to end, but wasn't trying to hold on to it either. I breathed in. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to say anything. I used to fill every silence. With words. With jokes. With action. But now, I simply existed. And that was enough. Are you okay? Ethan asked softly, not touching me, but somehow still reaching me. I'm more than okay, I whispered. I feel like I just woke up. From a long, warm, numbing sleep. He nodded. Calmly. As if he'd known that's exactly what would happen. And that scared me. Not because of what we'd done. But because I had spent so long not allowing myself to be. Lucas stepped closer and sat down. Not too near, just enough. His hands rested calmly. His posture relaxed. He didn't smile, but there was no regret in his eyes. He saw me. Not just with his eyes. With something deeper. You've changed, he said quietly. I can see it. Yes, I replied. Forever? I turned to Ethan. He didn't look away. Only if you want it to be, he said. And that's when I realized the truth. I hadn't changed. I had remembered. Remembered who I was, before fear. Before the boundaries. Before expectations. And I didn't want to lose her again. None of us tried to hold on to the moment. There was no rush to hug, no pretending nothing had happened. We just breathed. Slow. Steady. Together. When Lucas finally stood and left without a word, I didn't feel loss. He wasn't leaving us. He had simply completed his part in the story. My inner story. One I would never forget. Ethan was still beside me. He reached for my hand. Tell me, he whispered. What are you feeling? Not fear. Not shame. Not guilt. I turned to him. Just gratitude. And love. For me, he asked. For me, I whispered. And then, for everything that happened tonight. He leaned in and kissed my temple. Soft. Still. Certain. The kind of kiss that only comes from someone who truly sees you. Sometimes, life throws us moments that don't fit into the usual lines. A night that began as a simple celebration turned into something else entirely, a discovery. I crossed a line. One that I had drawn for myself. Not because I was searching for another man. But because I wanted, finally, to feel myself. Some will say it was a mistake. Others will call it betrayal. But for me, it was a return to the woman I used to be. The one I had silenced. The one who didn't act out of fear or duty, but from truth. Desire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes, it heals. Sometimes, it gives us what we were too afraid to ask for. A touch that wakes us up. A look that doesn't need words. A presence that stays not out of obligation, but out of feeling. Well, this story has come to an end. But has it really ended, or is there more to come? Now I want to ask you. Have you ever had a night? A moment? A person? That turned your whole world upside down? A moment when you suddenly realized. I'm alive. I'm real. I'm not here for anyone else, I'm here for me. Tell me in the comments. Or, if you'd rather stay quiet, just write. I know what this feels like. And that will be enough. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell, so you never miss another honest, raw, real-life story. Thank you for staying with me till the very end. You're not just a viewer. You're part of this. See you in the next video.